Cool. Hi guys. Just jumping on this week, just to give a bit of mid-competition feedback. So looks like we have a few entries in progress. I think about 4 or 5. So I thought I'd take the opportunity this week, yeah, just to sort of go through a few of the entries through our Discord channel and just sort of talk about the work in progress and maybe provide a bit of feedback, and also just spend a little bit of time on some other assets as well. A few of you guys have submitted some other work, and in an attempt to make this a little bit more consistent each week, I thought we'd go down that route this week as well. So let me just share my screen. So as we know, this week we have the Steampunk Compass challenge. So a really fun, really interesting challenge. So let's just go through our entries. Nope. All right, so we only have one entry so far. One sec. So we only have the one entry so far in this one. Obviously, we're still waiting on everyone else to come through. But let's have a look at this guy. So some really lovely music. It's presented really beautifully. Well done with this one. Cool. So I guess let me just wind through the forward. So yeah, no, honestly, really beautiful job to get this out in a week. It's, yeah, the materials, the model and everything's really quite lovely. I love the backgrounds. Really, goes along with the theme, the music. Really well done. I think something that jumps out to me is some of the materials, especially this sort of gold bronzy material. Now, we don't have any reference images for what you are going for, so I guess my opening comment would be to please add a breakdown to this. I know we've got another week left, so please add, some breakdowns and some reference images so we can really take a look at it. So if we have a look at the steampunk, some of these images here, you can see that the metal is a little bit softer, if that makes sense. So if we go through some of the contrast in those details, even though it's quite dirty, it's still quite smooth and it appears quite metallic. Now, if we go to this one here, the sort of, I think it's the level of the bump on the material is making the material feel a little bit thick. So almost like it's covered in paint, as opposed to being a worn down gold or bronze material. So I would reduce some of this bump. So the second level of detail, we have our gold. Let's just go through some of these. So you can see we've got a metallic, really shiny metallic material underneath with this really thick, rough layer on top. And yeah, that combination is a little bit too contrasty. So we can lower the contrast between those two, because if something is going to be this rough and this dirty, we would expect it to not quite get to the level of shininess that we see in some of the cleaner areas. So if the idea is that we want it to be quite rough and quite dirty, if we have a look at some of these ones here, we can see that it's quite uniformly a little bit rougher, and that contrast between tarnish and non-tarnish is just not quite as strong. It's a little bit more subtle. So there's a lot, we can do a lot with the subtlety in textures as opposed to really cranking every single detail. And yeah, just reduce some of this bump detail on some of these thicker pieces as well. You can have bump in gold or bronze, but just maybe save it for some scratches, or just reduce it by maybe 50%, just so it doesn't appear like a really thick layer on top. I think that will really assist in getting something across the line that's a bit subtler. I'm loving some of these really nice details with the paint, even the red and the blue. I think that's really nice. It just adds another little bit of interest. The model itself is quite lovely. If you've got another week and you want to add some more details, you certainly could add a little bit more into the model, maybe some extra little pieces. But to be honest, oh, actually, no, we've got quite a bit on the back here. Let's go through. Yeah, maybe if you could render a piece that's a little bit more towards the back so we can see it a bit better. Hold on, let's just move this to the back. Yeah, so no, I think it's really quite lovely. Yeah, no, the model's really quite lovely. Well done. Add that breakdown, please. Begging you. All right. So I just pulled a few screenshots from the Discord just to see how we're all going. I know you probably didn't expect me to pop it on the screen, but hopefully that's all right. So this one here, this one belonged to Matt C, and he was saying that, yeah, so right now it's just a work in progress. Really loving the design. Well done. You've got so many little details, cogs and gears and things like that coming through. So obviously, show us when you get this one over the line, show us your breakdown. I'd love to see the topology of this one, how you managed to get this such high poly details. And yeah, definitely show us those beautiful materials. I think that's really going to come to life. Yeah, well done. Well done with this one. So this one's another one we have. Another, again, like materials obviously a work in progress, but look at the model. Like I'm absolutely loving some of these sort of sharper details coming into contrast with some of the gears. I think that's really cool. And, you know, you've modeled the northeast, southwest and things like that. So I think what's definitely going to get this one across the line is those materials. So, you know, really spend a bit of time getting some of those lovely details in there. Put a really soft background in. Doesn't have to be really detailed, but if you can get a bit of texture onto this background, and make sure you put a good HDRI in. And this goes for everyone. For metals, it's so important when rendering metals that we have a HDRI in the background, because what makes a metal look and feels like a metal is essentially its reflections. If we don't have any reflections in the background, the metal is not going to look right. Oh, I can't zoom in very close, but if you put gold or bronze or any sort of metal in a dark room, it's going to look black. It's going to have absolutely no detail on it. So if you pop an environment light in there, it will have the reflections from the environment. Even here, you can see that on the glass, we have the environment reflecting through. It will really just bring it to life. So pop a HDRI in there as well. But really, really excited to see this one come through. And this is the last one. So I'm really excited about this one. You know, not only do we have the compass, we've got a bit of a wristwatch thing happening as well. So I'm excited to see how you pull this one off. Not sure what your plan is for the middle yet, whether it's going to be like a texture or whether you're going to model some geometry. Either way, I think it will be quite successful. Don't forget about, you know, some of these details around here. So you've done a lot of modeling here, and there's a lot of materials. So I'd be interested to see how far you get through this piece. Because, you know, there's a lot of leather as well, a lot of gold and things like that. So it's quite a challenging piece which you've taken on. But if you can pull it off, I'm really excited to see what the result is. I guess with the hand and things like that, what's going to be challenging is whether or not you choose to render the hand in with your model. Because just keep in mind, if the hand isn't textured properly or modeled properly, it could distract away from the piece. So whatever you decide to do, just make sure it comes together as a whole, and don't be afraid to just focus on the watch if there's a little bit too much going on. So that's sort of my advice for that one. But yeah, great work, guys. Really happy to see these come through. And I thought I'd just take the opportunity because I went back through the Discord and just wanted to have a look at some other things that people have been posting. So one of our recent weekly drills was the space door. And again, unfortunately, we only had 2 entries, but this artist decided to push it a little bit further. And we love seeing that. So if we give you guys feedback and you're able to push it that little bit further, it's amazing. Like it really shows that you're interested, that you're keen, and it's the sort of thing, you know, that gets you guys noticed. So the feedback for this one was that we'd like to see a little bit of scale reference. We had no idea how big this space door was, whether it was big, whether it was small. So if you can add a bit of a size reference so we can understand it a bit better, and really push that lighting a bit more, because right now it was appearing a little bit flat and lacking a bit of interest. So if I just go to now the update, how great is that, guys? Look, so before and after. So something which is I'm really digging is like these highlights. on the gold or the bronzy sort of part coming off of here. Yeah, it's so much more punchier. It's so much more contrast, and the background change as well, adding a bit of texture into that. Just, yeah, it's honestly a really great update. Well done. And if we just push it forward a little bit more, we have reference for how it opens, so we can see that the doors open left to right, which was really wicked, and some scale reference as well. So this one's really cool. I think this piece as a whole is probably my favorite one. I think it works wonders. So I think this would be your, your finished piece for it all. Well done, great work. I don't have any further feedback on that, so well done. And lastly, we had this guy come through. Now, I believe it's still a work in progress, but I just thought I would pop it up and just provide a little bit of feedback for this one. So we'll go through it. So it's like a product design bedside table. So I understand that. I understand that with product design, we need things to look quite clean. Especially, like if you're putting it in a magazine, you don't want it looking too dirty, because the idea is you want people to buy it, right? But there's a fine line between having something perfect and having it realistic. So even perfectly clean models will still have a bit of character and maybe a few little imperfections that make it look a little bit more realistic. So what I thought I would do was I would just pop it on the side. I just also grabbed up some reference images as well. So, I mean, it's not the same model, obviously, but, it gives you a little bit of an idea of, on the right, I mean, this is a product and it's still it's pretty clean, but it just looks a little bit more realistic. So I thought we could sort of talk about what is making this one look more realistic. I think like lighting definitely plays a big part in this. So perhaps we can work on some of the lighting, getting more of like a key light coming in. Right now it's appearing a little bit flat. So if we sort of go towards on this side here, we have a clear direction of light coming in. And I think the actual camera position is a little bit nicer on the right-hand side. So you want to sort of twist the camera down a little bit so we see a little bit more from the front, and that's more like in the photography of the model. We want it to it's just a little bit more appealing than the top down. So I think we did have another render. Yeah, so this one is a lot nicer. Maybe would angle it a little bit more so we can see a bit more of the top, but it just sort of makes the bedside table more of a focus on the piece, whereas this one is a little bit of an awkward angle. So I would just angle it a little bit more to look more like the one on the right. And in terms of the wood itself, now on the left, like the wood grain is really beautiful. You've done a great job with this grain. That looks really natural. What is not feeling natural is some of the material responses. It's looking really flat and quite decontrasted. So almost it doesn't appear like it's got much of a roughness map or much of a bump map on it. It just looks like it's a color with a flat roughness throughout. So what we want to sort of be introducing is well, we want to first think about what is this made out of. Is it solid wood, all right, with a varnish layer on top? Or is it like a veneer, like the thin pieces of veneer on top? Or is it like a laminate? So first of all, really establish what type of material this is. And then think about how you're going to texture that. So if it is got like a coating layer on top, you probably want to work with a coat or some sort of second specular lobe to get this shiny layer on top. Otherwise, if you're going for something a little bit more rough, you don't have to, use that coating layer. But I think what I'm sort of looking at is see how this sort of specular highlight is really flat across the whole thing. There's no interest, there's no details in it. You might have, yeah, it doesn't look like there's much roughness. So push that roughness a bit more. Push the contrast in your base color map a little bit as well. We can see that the wood grain, I know it's a different type of wood, but the wood grain is a little bit more contrasted. It's not as flat, so we can really define some of those wood grains a little bit better. Whereas here we can sort of see as the specular highlight washes out some of that wood, it loses a lot of its detail and appears a little bit wishy-washy. So we want to bump up some of that contrast in both the roughness and the base color to really get some more details happening, and also put a little bit of bump in there. It will be probably a little bit more bumpier if it's a solid wood as opposed to like a veneer. But even just a really, really subtle bump, it doesn't have to be strong, just enough so that when the specular highlight comes over the top, it's readable, all right? So it doesn't appear so flat. The next thing I sort of noticed was the construction. So again, this is going to be different whether or not it's a veneer or a solid wood, but I can see that sort of on the ends of the wood here, I would expect, so I'm just trying to think of an example. Yeah, so if we look at the end piece of the wood, can you see how the wood grain has a different pattern on the side than it does on the top? And that's just because it's been cross-sectioned, right? So if you look at the grain at a cross-section, it's going to look much different to the long pieces of grain going downwards. So really think about when you cut this wood, what is it going to look like? Now, if it's a veneer, it's going to be slightly different because, you know, you just sort of paste the wood grain on all of the sides. So it would make a little bit more sense. But right now, I think this would probably lend itself more towards a real wood. And I think you'd get a lot more out of it if you sort of followed the natural curves of the wood. On the end, make sure you have like an end grain. On the front, make sure you have a longer grain. That's just an idea. Maybe that's, you know, it's up to you whether you choose to do that, but right now it sort of appears a little bit like a plastered on texture just because, you know, the lines aren't adding up. There's sort of different patterns on every face. Doesn't appear quite natural. Get a few little ticks and, you know, little dents and stuff here and there. You can sort of see down the base here. Now, it's hard to see, but there are a few really subtle scratches, a few like sort of white nicks and dents and things like that. That would really just help sell this piece and bring it to life a little bit more. But yeah, and then if you wanted to go a little bit further, maybe you could pop something on top. You know, I know it's not essential, but maybe you could put a little, I don't know, something on top, like a flower or something, or a vase. Yeah, no, well done. Really happy with this. Well, like, great work. Get a breakdown in there as well. I'd be really interested to see how you made this. So cool. That's it for now, guys. Just a sort of a quick one this week. In an attempt to sort of keep these regular, even if we don't have entries, I will be reviewing, or myself and Justin will be reviewing more work. So if you have something that you want me to take a look at in terms of model or texture, pop it in the Discord channel and I'd be more than happy to take a look. Cool. Thanks for listening, guys.